Ancient Egyptian creation myths. The Egyptian pantheon was filled with deities who inhabited the heavens but whose influence was experienced on earth. In the pyramid, texts of the Old Kingdom which first appeared on the interiors of the pyramids of the kings of the 5th dynasty of the Old Kingdom, c. 2500–2350 BCE, we learn that the Egyptians regarded the sky as a dwelling place of their gods and a location connected to the afterlife. Just as their daily life depended upon the Nile River, the Egyptians envisioned this heavenly realm as a landscape that divine beings navigated in sacred boats. The sun god, Re, was of paramount importance to the ancient Egyptians, and the sun's daily passage from east to west and its daily rising and setting served as a metaphor for the cycle of life, from birth to adulthood to death to rebirth. The omnipresent sun in what was largely a desert environment may also explain the early Egyptians' interest in solar concepts. At dusk, the sun god proceeded into the underworld, the Duat. New Kingdom funerary texts, 1292–1075 BCE, and the associated images found on the walls of royal tombs record his nighttime journey. The sun god spent the 12 hours of the night traveling in the underworld, ultimately merging with Osiris, the primary funerary deity. The journey was treacherous, and the sun god faced his enemy, Apophis, a serpent who threatened him as he traveled in his solar boat nightly. Another of Re's important roles was as a creator god. The sun's reappearance on the horizon at dawn each day was a symbol of the recreation of the world. However, Re was not the sole creator god in Egyptian mythology. The Egyptians had several elaborate myths describing the origins of their world. Each of these creation stories was centered at a different city. The Hermopolitan cosmology arose at the site of Hermopolis in Middle Egypt. Hermopolis was a city sacred to Thoth, the god of wisdom. The ancient Greeks equated Thoth with their god Hermes, which gives us the name Hermopolis, or City of Hermes. The ancient Egyptian name for this city was Kemnu, or Eight Town. The number 8 in this place name makes references to the 8 deities, the Ogdoad, who are the main characters in this version of the creation story. The Ogdoad consisted of 4 frog-headed male gods and their serpent-headed female counterparts. This divine group represented the dark, watery, unknown, and eternal state of the cosmos prior to creation. Nun and Naune represented water. Het and Hauhet expressed the notion of infinity. Kek and Kauket stood for darkness. Amun and Amaunet reflected the concept of hiddenness. These 8 gods existed within the watery chaos of pre-creation. Within this unchanging nothingness, there was the potential for creation. The Egyptians believed that from these 8 gods came a cosmic egg that contained the deity responsible for creating the rest of the world, including the primeval mound, the first land to arise out of the waters of pre-creation. In some versions of the myth, the egg was laid by a goose named the Great Cackler, while in other versions, an ibis, the bird associated with the god Thoth, is responsible for the egg. Thoth's appearance here in the myth is probably the work of the Hermopolitan priesthood, who wanted to recognize the importance of the city's patron deity. After the mound appeared, a lotus blossom bloomed, signaling the birth of the newborn sun god. After the sun made its first appearance, the rest of creation could follow. In some cases, this myth further describes a scarab beetle that emerges from the lotus. The scarab is often a solar symbol, and the texts describe how this beetle transforms into a child. When this child cried, his tears became humankind. The importance of the sun in the creation of the world is highlighted in another creation myth that makes reference to a collective of gods known as the Heliopolitan Ennead. These 9 deities, the Ennead, are mentioned in the Old Kingdom pyramid texts. This myth seems to have originated at the city of Iunu, or Heliopolis, meaning city of the sun in Greek. Here, the creation of the world begins with a creator god named Atum, or Re-Atum. Just as we see with the Hermopolitan version of creation, there is a chaotic, watery state of pre-creation, in which Atum resides before he is born. Atum is self-created and arises in the shape of an obelisk-like pillar, the Benben in Heliopolis. He engenders by means of his own bodily fluids. To begin the creation of the world, Atum spits out a pair of divine beings, Shu, the god of air, and Tefnut, his female counterpart, the goddess of moisture. Shu and Tefnut in turn produce a second generation of gods. Their son, Geb, is the god of the earth, and his sister wife, Nut, is the sky goddess. With this second generation, the Egyptian cosmos comes into existence, and all the elements necessary for life on earth, the sun, air, moisture, land, and sky, are now in place. The iconography of Geb and Nut together is particularly evocative. Geb appears as a human male lying on the ground. Arched above him, separated by their father Shu, stretches the figure of his sister wife Nut, often shown as a nude female whose body is covered in stars. The Egyptians envisioned her arms and legs as the pillars of the sky and each of her limbs as indicators of the four cardinal points. Before their separation by their father, Geb and Nut were able to produce another generation of gods, Isis, Osiris, Seth, and Nephthys. Isis and Osiris in turn produced Horus. It is interesting to consider that the Heliopolitan genealogy can also be viewed as the family tree of the Egyptian king. Each king was considered a representative of Horus while he was alive and was then associated with the god Osiris, the king of the dead, after his death. In addition to their roles in the creation of the cosmos, members of the Aeneid are involved in other cycles of life and rebirth. For example, the sky goddess Nut is believed to give birth to the sun each day, and in some traditions she also gives birth to the stars. When observing the nighttime sky, the Egyptians may have noticed that the outer arm of the Milky Way resembled a female form and identified this celestial feature with the goddess Nut. As a goddess responsible for the sun's daily rebirth, Nut was also accorded a role in the resurrection of the dead. Representations of Nut on the ceilings of New Kingdom, 1539-1075 BCE, royal tombs show the goddess with the sun entering her mouth and passing through her star-covered body during the night, to be reborn in the morning. She often appears on the inside lids of sarcophagi, protecting the deceased until he or she, like the sun god Re, would be reborn. Nut can also appear on the lids of coffins as a woman with wings spread protectively across the chest of the deceased.